The year was 2005, and I remember driving away from the airport because I had just put Samantha on a plane with our kids who were 5, 4, and about 5 weeks old. Disclosure had just happened about a week earlier. As I was leaving the airport, I received a threatening phone call from a gentleman who had been one of my best friends, who was threatening me with legal action that was unsubstantiated, outrageous, and really just plain ridiculous. My name had been dragged all the way through the internet, which obviously was a bit more primitive back then, but still incredibly powerful in terms of ruining someone. And as I drove away from the airport, I remember being so suicidal. I drove to Manhattan Beach, parked in a parking lot, walked on the beach, got on my knees before God, and wept like a child. It was in this moment that, for the first time in several years since college, I was genuinely contemplating suicide. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with people who were trying to yell, scream, shame, condemn, attack, threaten, you name it, because I was in a pretty significant public eye. And I genuinely thought about ending it all. Now, later that night, I would be in my home office by myself at about 2 in the morning, completely shell-shocked at where my life had turned in just 4 or 5 days. I picked up the phone and called the suicide hotline because I just needed to talk to somebody. And as I reached across my desk, I had a picture of my 2 children, who at the time were around 4 and 5 years old. And for me, because I do come from a position of faith, I felt like God spoke to me and said, if there was any reason for you to live, it would be these children. Even though you have no idea about your future, your marriage, your life, your name, your reputation, everything, you've got these kids. You can't do this to them. I think I talked on the phone to a grief counselor from the suicide hotline for 5 or 6 minutes. I hung up the phone. And what would follow would be incredible agony, the likes of which only people like yourself who are going through similar events can relate to. Now, the setting that I just described to you on that beach in Manhattan Beach was roughly 13 years ago. If you were to have sat down on the beach with me and told me so much of what would have happened positively to me, I would have called you a liar, said you were a drug addict, and would not have believed you. I want to tell you today, for those that are surrounded with agony and despair and hopelessness, of which I can remember like that. It doesn't take very long for me to remember the hopelessness and the despair and just the slugfest that you can feel like you are in with the emotional upheaval that you deal with every day. But just yesterday, I had literally one of the best days of my entire life. I don't want to go too much into it because of just protecting my children and not sharing too much about them. But through a series of events, yesterday was a day that both Samantha and I will remember forever. Now, what's important is that you understand when I say to you that there are better days ahead for you, it is not just some allegory, it's not just some kind of phrase. I just really want to tell you that there are better days ahead for you, the likes that you can't even imagine. But we can be blinded by our pain. And I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But I want to speak to you right where you're at, because there's so many of you that are very early on in recovery. You don't even know if you're in recovery. You just know you've found out about your spouse's affair, or you've just disclosed your affair, or you've been caught, you've been arrested, if you will, in your choices, and now you've been exposed. And you wonder, is there literally anything else to live for? And you can begin to doubt that there will ever be any good days in your life ever again. You can begin to wonder and doubt if there's anything worth living for, because you have just screwed up your life in such a way that it appears unrepairable. And I want to tell you, you have to be careful because you can be blinded. You can be blinded by a few things. Number one, you can be blinded by now. What I mean is, you can be blinded from faith, blinded from any good days ever coming again by just the simple existence of what's going on in your life right now. The pain, the hurt, the confusion, the anger, the rage, the sorrow, the despair. Don't let now blind you from the reality that your life is not over. And you do not have to end your life. You do not have to give up. You do not have to throw away all hope because right now seems so impossibly unredeemable. The fact is, you can't see the future. You can't see the day that I had yesterday and so many other days between 2005 and right now. There have been more days than I can count that I have looked at these days and felt them and experienced them and thought, I never thought I would feel this joy ever again. I never thought I would feel the elation, the gratitude that I feel right now in this moment because of what I am experiencing with Samantha or even just on my own or with my children right now. Another way that we can be blinded is by our lack of control about what's happening around us. I don't know that I've ever felt more helpless and out of control than when my dad died in 1994, when I suffered a horrendous injury that I was supposed to be a first-round pick in the Major League Baseball draft in 1992, and that was changed forever significantly. And when disclosure happened and everything disintegrated around me, I was blinded from any hope or faith by the fact of how out of control I felt. For me, coming from faith, it reinforced my faith and it caused me eventually to swing over to a place of great dependability and trust upon God. For those of you that don't come from faith, it's going to completely readjust your equilibrium. It's going to change the way you face life. When you feel so out of control, there's a point when you don't come from faith when you have to trust the process and you have to regain a trust in your own ability to push through the darkness, the uncertainty, the pain, and the agony, and find that person that you are able to become if you will just not quit. We can also be blinded by discouragement. We can feel so discouraged that we're blinded from any expectation that this will ever get any better, that our spouse will ever change, that we'll ever be able to forgive, that we'll ever be able to grieve enough, that we'll ever stop crying, that we'll ever one day love our spouse, that we'll ever one day get back to normal and get our life back. Finally, and this one really hurts, we can be blinded by our pride. Because oftentimes we don't want to get help. We don't want to surrender to the process. We don't want to trust an expert. We don't want to let go of the reins. We think we know how things need to go. We think we know what recovery should look like and what the recovery process should look like. And we are blinded from the mistakes that we're making. We're blinded from how devastating our choices have been to our spouse. We're blinded from how we're affecting our spouse and our children if we have them. We are blinded by what our choices have done to our own life because we refuse to humble ourselves. We refuse to humble ourselves, commit to a process, get help from someone smarter than us, and we end up doing more damage. There are better days ahead. You're going to have to commit to a process, and you're going to have to find someone that has more faith for your situation than you do. You're going to have to find a support group that can see what you do not see, that can encourage you in ways that you don't even know how to encourage yourself yet. I'm so glad that you are here on this video blog. I hope that you keep coming back, and I hope that I can be a voice of encouragement to your life. But I hope that you will truly grab hold of the belief that there are truly better days ahead for you.